Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Adobe Live. I'm your host Rocky Roark and I'm here with Kevin Yang. We're going to be creating some awesome stuff in Adobe XD and Adobe Illustrator CC and maybe even some stuff in Adobe After Effects. How you feeling about today?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah, you feeling good?
Yeah.
Second day on the live stream. He was actually sweating bullets earlier. He didn't want me to say anything, but you know what? He did a great job yesterday, so I'm really excited. So let's say there's a lot of people in the chat here saying hello. Hello, everybody. Hello, Sam, Kita. I'm always horrible with names. Hey, Tim. Hope you guys are having a great day and hope you guys are going to enjoy today's live stream. Now, before we get started on talking about what we did yesterday, I just wanted to reiterate that in about 30 minutes into the stream, we are going to be having a little bit of a giveaway, so be active in the chat. The giveaway is going to be 100 free stickers from Sticker Mule. And if you guys don't get a chance to win today or you didn't get a chance to win yesterday, I believe you can go to stickermule.com/Adobe Live 19 to get 10 free stickers for $1. I love that deal. I'm actually going to jump on that after the stream and get some free stickers for a branding project. But yeah, so we're excited about this. We're going to be jumping in probably about the 1 hour and 35 minute mark, and we're going to be going through and doing a little bit of review of today's challenge. And if you guys would like to see what today's challenge is, you can check in the chat. There's a little tab that says challenge. Just click that and you should be able to see it. And you guys can submit it to Discord. And me and Kevin are going to be doing a little bit of critiquing at the end of today's stream. How are you feeling? You feeling good? You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah?
I'm ready to get started.
So we're going to do a quick little recap. Kevin's going to walk through what he's done in Adobe XD. And then I'm going to talk about what I did in Adobe Illustrator yesterday.
Cool. Yeah, just a recap from yesterday's stream. We worked on basically two screens of our chess app, the home screen and the match screen. We've also got Rocky's really cool rook that he's gonna walk you through in a minute, but we decided to drop that in for like the avatar. I thought it was really cool. So yeah, we made a bunch of components too, which basically map to all the things here that you see on each of the screens. And yeah, we made a few different states as well for like whether it's your move or their move. And yeah, and then we also did a few states of like what it would look like for a piece to have like available moves, what it would look like for a piece to take another piece, and we'll probably expand more on that today as well.
It looks like you got some people challenging you in chess in the chat.
Oh, yikes.
I know,
Big
right?
Yikes.
I actually came close to trying to find a chess set so that me and Kevin could play against each other in the hotel. But unfortunately, I could not find. I went to 3 stores and could not find a chess set. Maybe I was being a little picky, but so we're going to jump over into my screen. I'm just going to go over what I did yesterday. As Kevin showed, we went through and I showed like how I go about stylizing and building each of these pieces. We went through and I built a pawn with nothing but rectangles. Even the circle top here was created with just rectangles all the way rounded. And then I went through and shared how I go through doing shading and highlights. And we finished up on my side with doing a couple little color explorations using the Adobe Recolor feature in Adobe Illustrator CC. And we ended up deciding to go with this color scheme right here for our pieces because we felt like it really was a great color contrast with the light orange tones that Kevin was using in the app. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be actually creating some badges, some very simple badges for the app, celebrating either having taking a piece or having won a match or maybe something along those lines. We still haven't figured that out quite yet, but we're gonna do it as we go along. And then Kevin, do you want to talk about what you're gonna be doing?
Yeah, so if we could, jump back. I think it would be really cool to try to get some of this into After Effects and kind of work through what it would be like to transition from the home screen to like the match will begin shortly screen. Just to give you kind of an idea, I think these sorts of things are pretty popular in like UI design today. I think they look great in case studies and in portfolios. And even though it might look intimidating at first, I think if you can just take advantage of some of the basic functionality of After Effects, you can actually make some pretty cool stuff. So
yeah, I think it's really cool to create something like this because it's not just a prototype. It actually shows more of that, shows the animations, the transitions. And I think it's really cool. And if I was creating it, I would be a little bit concerned. It makes me a little nervous seeing that. But Kevin was showing me some stuff earlier, and you know what? I know he's going to do a great job on this.
Oh, thanks. It'll be fun. We're going to figure it out together.
Yeah. So, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I'll get started prepping I'm going to kind of walk everyone through how I try to prep my files for animation. Then we're going to pull everything in After Effects, and then we're going to do some work, and then we'll probably kick it back to Rocky to see like some of the badge making stuff that he's going to be tackling. So
sure, that sounds great. I'm curious, all those people in the chat, please let us know where you guys are from, where you guys are tuning in from. I think that'd be a really cool thing to see where everybody is at. And again, remember at the 30-minute mark, which you have about, I think, 24 minutes to go, we're going to be doing a little bit of a giveaway of 100 free stickers from Sticker Mule. And I know you guys definitely want to snag that, so be active in the chat. Send over any questions you guys might have, and of course, just say hello.
All right, so jumping into our home screen, here's like a few, I kind of like to make like a rough outline of what I'm trying to accomplish for the animation. The first thing I like to think about is what I think won't change, and I like to typically group those things together. So I think it would be really cool if this button kind of expanded outward and kind of became the background of this screen. So that's what I'm gonna kind of base the animation upon. So some things that I don't think will change will be like all the stats, the name and the avatar. Like I might fade them out, but we're not gonna really animate them past that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and group all these elements together so that they're all nice and packaged together.
I'm gonna be a little bit of a creepy art director.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how hard would it be to have those numbers roll up? So like you go from 0 up to 1670. Is that something that would be difficult in After Effects?
We can definitely do it. I've done something similar before. I will have to Google some stuff. Because it involves a script, but we can definitely do it. And if we have time, I'd actually love to do it because I think it would look really cool. Like just have the numbers increment upwards.
And you can do that while I'm creating a badge. So it's like I think that's perfect because I think that would add a little extra bit to it.
Yeah.
Because instead of just having the text just like fly in or dissolve out or anything like that, give it a little bit more character, and I think it would make the experience of it a little bit more enriching. And sorry, I'm being hovering art director here.
No, it's good. It's good.
Saw a lot of cool places: Nigeria, UK. Saw Philly pop up in the chat. Wisconsin, Utah. Saw a lot of cool places pop up in the chat. It's really cool to see how many people are tuning in, especially since I'm pretty sure in Europe, it's getting pretty late there, and the fact that you guys are tuning in is really spectacular. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and for watching us create all of this magic, because that's what this is. It's really magic.
So what I just did here is I copied and pasted this button into this matchmaking state because I just want to have this available. We're basically gonna, in After Effects, convert this button into this button by changing the color of the box and swapping out the text. And then I bundled these buttons together because they're just gonna fade away as well. These lines I want to keep separate because I think we're gonna I really want to do something with these lines, like animate them kind of subtly just to show that matchmaking is happening. I think it'll add really nice texture to the screen. So I think we're at a state where we can go ahead and port this over. So we can just go to File, Export, After Effects. This is super cool and it works pretty well. We're obviously gonna have to do some cleanup in After Effects as well, but that's just how it is. Like I think just by like pre-composing things, and so if you notice, there's kind of a lot going on here. So we're gonna try to reduce the amount of things that we see in this sort of bottom menu.
Why don't you put it to full screen so
yeah.
everybody can see? There we go.
And I'm also gonna copy over the color here. Since we didn't set a background color, we should go ahead and do that. And there we go. All right, so we've got, you know, the screen, we've got our home screen that we built out in XD, but now it's in After Effects, so we can kind of go ahead and get started and cleaning this up. So I think what I normally do is I kind of just go around and I try to figure out where everything is, so I know what can be grouped together, what needs to be left alone. So I can see here that all of these things, like these are all the stats and this text up here. So I think we can go ahead and just group everything, and then I like to just pre-compose it, which basically it's basically like grouping everything. It kind of functions
into
similarly
a shell,
to,
kind of, to where
Yeah.
you can go through and you can actually dive into that single sequence and create from there. You know, I see some people in the chat, they're saying either that they haven't worked in After Effects in a while, or they want to work in After Effects, but it can be intimidating. What kind of resources have you used in the past to learn After Effects, or to even learn how to do what you're doing?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. There's a really great YouTube channel called Mount MoGraph. That's actually...
I have heard of that, yeah.
That's kind of how I learned After Effects. Like, I learned it in school, but I supplemented it with this Mount MoGraph YouTube channel. It's also Cinema 4D as well. That's also how I learned a lot of Cinema 4D as well. It's both. I was exposed to After Effects and Cinema 4D in college, but I think watching those YouTube videos really helped me kind of learn the intricacies, and I highly recommend. That's always a resource that I give out to people that want to learn motion graphics in general. A lot of the tutorials are actually more character animation tutorials, but
Yeah.
I think if you can kind of make that stuff make sense to you, this stuff will follow pretty easily. And I think his tutorials are super good.
Yeah, I've also used Skillshare. I've done a little bit of animation myself. It's something where I have friends who they are constantly telling me, Rocky, you need to learn animation because it's the next way to, you know, take your illustrations and bring them to life. But sometimes it is hard because you can't always have the time to go through, because learning After Effects it's an amazing piece of software, but like everyone says, it can be intimidating because there's so much that you can do and so much you have to learn. But, you know, in the long run, I do want to eventually get better at it, but it is something, it even intimidates me. So I definitely understand where everybody's coming from.
No, it's something that is, I think I mentioned this about Cinema 4D yesterday, how it can be, it feels really intimidating, and I think it's just a matter of I think once people see something move, or once they build something in 3D, like it kind of makes you feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I think the hardest part is starting.
Yeah.
But
Sam Peterson actually has a question. What situations would it be better to use Premiere over using After Effects?
I primarily use After Effects. My understanding is that Premiere is really good for like video editing. So if I was trying to cut together like maybe like a 5-minute long sort of thing that had a lot of video components, I think you'd probably want to go to Premiere, and then if you wanted to do graphics on top of that, you would kind of export the video out, bring it into After Effects, and then do your graphic work on top.
Yeah.
But admittedly, I don't do a lot of video work, so I'm not in Premiere a lot.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've used Premiere a lot, you know, editing YouTube videos. I even use it to edit my podcast, and I have used, for YouTube in particular, I have created some things in After Effects, brought them into Premiere, And I find that it's really helpful. And I think, and I don't know, because maybe this might be a little bit more something you might want to do more in After Effects, but I wonder if you create like different scenes or different clips in After Effects and then bring them into Premiere. Then you can maybe, if you wanted to be this dramatic, you could add, music or some sort of audio. If you're doing it for a client, you could then add audio on top of that in Premiere of you talking about what's going on or the interactions.
Yeah. And even and After Effects is really tricky. So I just realized I kind of messed up the grouping. So I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to re-export it. So when you have things, so remember when we talked about components yesterday? When you have these as components, when they get pulled into After Effects, they get thrown into their own pre-composition, but I actually don't want that for this button. So I went back and I basically made it a live thing instead of a component. So now when I pull it back into After Effects, it's going to be, it's going to hopefully be not pre-composed, and then we can be on our merry way.
And let's say that if for some reason we can't finish up the After Effects, Kevin has gone through and created a little sample that he can share with all of you at the end, so you guys can see like what you're capable of in this.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going ahead and kind of redoing some of the work there. Sorry about that.
Well, while you're doing that, we can jump over to my screen. And I've started to think about how we could potentially create badges in Illustrator using those chess pieces. And I think we'll be switching over in just a moment. One thing that I like to do is sometimes I like to have a game plan when I'm going and creating badges. And sometimes I want to just like do it kind of like spur of the moment, just like explore the opportunities. And one of the things that I wanted to do here, because the shape of these pieces, they're very vertical, they're very elongated, and so I decided, thinking about medieval castles and thinking about kind of the shapes of what the windows or the holes in the wall look like, I decided I kind of like doing a shape like this for at least this version of the badge. And so normally what I'll do is I'll first get like the container and figure out, okay, how do I want the container to look? And then I'll go through and actually create the type that we want in the pieces. And maybe Kevin can even help me out in this and figuring out what we want to do here. Do we want to create a badge that is for maybe someone upgraded to a new level or a new point system? Maybe it would be cool if you start off as a pawn.
Yeah.
And you upgrade, the pieces. So what would be? It would be pawn to rook, probably, right?
Well, I guess it would be from pawn to king, and then maybe we could have.
Or I mean, the next one would be rook.
Oh, I guess it would be. I guess it would be knight, maybe.
Knight? I feel like you would work your way from the side of the board to the king.
Okay, I think anything.
How about we do this?
fine.
How about we actually just and this is just us thinking out loud. But I'm curious, what does everybody think? Do you think it should be pawn, rook, then knight, or do you guys think it should be pawn, then knight? I'm curious what everyone has to say. Get the audience a little bit involved in these discussions. But while we're waiting for that, what I'm going to do is I imagine that we'll probably have text that goes around this piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the shape, and I'm going to go to Object, Path, Offset Path. I have a keyboard shortcut for this that I create custom. But what we're going to do here is Offset Path is one of my favorite features. Normally, before I started using this, I would click on the shape and I would just decrease the shape like this. The problem is that it's not always completely uniform, depending on the shape that you're using. So instead, I'm going to go to Path, Offset Path, and then I'm going to click Preview. And you can kind of see right here, let's actually do a really crazy one. it actually expands the shape outward without losing a whole lot of the shape. So we can also decrease the size of this. I'm gonna do, I think -100 would be good. Click OK. And I'm gonna remove the fill. And what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna get the text tool, and I'm going to get type on path. And we're gonna click and just like add that in there. Now I'm gonna use a text here. I'm gonna use a special typeface, I think, for this. But we're gonna increase the size here. And let's see, what do you think? What do you think would be a good copy for this? Maybe new level reach?
Yeah, like new level reached would be good.
Okay. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to hit up here in the paragraph section, align center. Oh, it looks like we have a few people. A few people say rook, pawn then rook, pawn, rook, knight, bishop, queen, king. Okay, so it seems like everyone seems to be agreed on that. I think that is a good good system because you're going from the outside in. All right. So we notice here that as soon as I hit center, so it was like this. So it was somewhat perfect. Still needed some tweaking, but when we hit centered, everything just went crazy. The thing that you can do is you can change this by moving these pieces here. And what I found is that if you try and get these to about center, you can see the purple line going across the screen there. It's not exactly centered, but we'll use that as a center mark. We can then take this piece here and also get it about centered. And so now what will happen is no matter what we type in here, I believe that looks, yeah, that's about right. No matter what we type in here, it's going to be more centered in the area. So like, instead of doing that, let's say Kevin is a wizard at AE. And so now you can kind of see that it's pretty straight. We're gonna just check that by grabbing a line. And we're just gonna move that across. And you can see that is actually pretty close. It might be just a light pixel off, but that's pretty good. I don't know about you guys, but I've struggled with that in the past, trying to get that perfect balance.
Yes.
And honestly, this is something that I didn't find out years ago. I actually just realized this last week when I was working on a badge design.
When you're making badges, I don't know if you have this issue, but I have a hard time getting text to look right in a circle or on a path. Do you have like any tips for the audience on like how to sometimes get the text to look balanced?
Sure. So when you talk about balance, are you talking about having text like up at the top and then having text at the bottom?
Yeah, or just making it look good along like a curve, essentially.
Yeah.
Like if you, I know you've done a lot of these. Like, do you have any trips with like tracking or like sizing or because?
Yeah, it's sometimes it is a little bit difficult depending on the type that you have, right? Mm-hmm. So what I do is I'm just gonna take this circle as an example here. We'll just grab some color so it just has like a little bit of color. And I'm going to expand it outward. With circles, you don't have to use the offset path because it's completely unified around. But we're gonna have to grab that. And now we're going to click on here just like we did. And let's see, we'll type, what would be a good thing? Adobe Live is awesome. All right. And so we're gonna do the same thing, right? Where we have it centered and we're going to, with a circle, it's a lot easier because we actually have an anchor point to where we can see where it matches up. Okay, so we have that first little bit of text up here. Now, the next part is actually interesting. This is something that a lot of people do things differently. And so I'm going to do the same thing where I copy that and I'm going to expand the circle outward.
Oh.
So that you can see here, like it's perfectly aligned to the top here. Now, I'm gonna do the same thing. We're gonna say Adobe Live is awesome. You should tune in today. All right. Then what I do is see this little line up here. Let me zoom in so you guys can see a little bit better. There's this little line right here. This here is what you use to control the inner axis. So you can have it on the outside, or you can have it in the inside. And it is very temperamental. It sometimes will not work properly, so don't stress if it starts to freak out on you. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing, where we align to that, and then we align over here. Let's see, it doesn't want to snap. There we go. And so now we have it going around, and it feels a little off, but it feels a lot more balanced than what it would have been. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you'll have different type sizes, some on the top, and you'll have different type sizes on the bottom. But this is like a rough way that I go about doing it. I did a lot of this I'm doing a rebranding for myself, and I had to do similar little pieces like this. Okay, so just to also mention, we have less than 5 minutes for the chat and win. So if you guys are tuning in and you guys aren't in the chat, aren't asking questions or talking or mentioning anything, definitely be involved. Ask any questions you have. You guys will not want to miss out on the potentially winning the 100 free stickers from Sticker Mule. And again, if you guys don't win, you can pick up 10 stickers for $1 by using the link www.stickermule.com/Adobe Live 19. I'm glad, Rory, I'm glad that you guys are learning so much. I'm glad that me and Kevin are able to help you guys out. And I hope you guys are having fun. We're having fun, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
You having fun?
Yeah, it's
feeling
so
good?
Much fun. Yeah.
Yeah? You ready for your next time to be on Adobe Live?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really like showing people stuff, and it's fun interacting with the chat.
He's going to be a pro before the end of this.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Okay, so we're going to jump back in here. And what we'll do is after the chat and win, we'll jump back over and check in on some of the progress that you're making, Kevin.
Cool.
All right, so I'm going to actually give this a white color to really contrast against the darker purple here. And I don't know, I kind of like the typeface that I'm using, but just in case, I don't know if you guys know too much about using the Adobe typefaces. Let me move this up here for you guys. But one of my favorite features when it comes to finding new typefaces is to actually go through and use different features. Like, so for instance, right now I have AMZ Pro Black selected, and there's this little icon which shows similar fonts. So I can click that, and now I can see all the different fonts that are similar to it in case I want something that was more sharp like this typeface here, or if I might want something a little bit more rounded. So we have an interesting question from Kevin Rostron. Kevin, what do you think about Webflow to design sites?
We were actually just talking about
this.
this.
We were. That's why it caught my eye, and I was like, you know what? That'd actually be an interesting question to talk about.
I personally have never used Webflow, but I hear good things. I know a lot of my friends have used Webflow to design their portfolio sites. I know Rocky could probably talk more about it because he was thinking about you were thinking about using Webflow to make your
so I'm actually planning, because I'm doing a rebranding for my personal brand / my business, and I'm actually going to be designing my personal site in XD and then building it out in Webflow. And I think there is a lot of stuff that we can potentially do there. I think that and yes, you know what? Someone actually just mentioned that they did hear about it through The Future on YouTube. And yet that's exactly where I heard about it as well. And I started playing with it last night. But I'll continue talking a little bit about that in a moment. It's time for the chat and win. So while they're choosing the winner, I would love to hear, what is everybody's favorite software in Adobe? All right, we are back, And I think we have a winner of the chat and win. Who could it be?
Let's see who the lucky winner is.
XD for sure. People are loving After Effects. Illustrator. I feel you on that one.
Yeah. Illustrator has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I've always loved Illustrator more because I'm a vector illustrator, but I do still use Photoshop from time to time as well. Adobe Flash. Wow, that's an oldie but a goodie.
Throwback.
Yeah. All right, we have a winner. Marquise Miller, you are the winner of the 100 free stickers from Sticker Mule. Again, if you guys didn't hear earlier, if you guys unfortunately did not win, you can definitely check out www.stickermule.com/Adobe Live 19, what is on the screen right now, for 10 stickers for $1. Whew, that was a mouthful. I actually saw right before we came back, someone actually mentioned that they were thinking about switching over from Squarespace to Webflow. I'm actually right there with you. I think that I want to be able to design my site in XD because I actually love using XD. I used to be a UI UX designer, so I definitely understand that. I definitely understand that want of more control. So I think that that's a really interesting thing. So how are we looking, Kevin?
Pretty good. So I'll zoom in a little bit to see what we've got so far. If I just kind of play it, we kind of have the button transition. We have like the quick play text, and then the button kind of gets a little bit darker, and then it switches to the matchmaking text. And then if you look really closely, we've got the bars kind of flying through now. I haven't done the vertical ones, but these are just the horizontal ones. There's actually a lot of cool effects that you can do in After Effects. And it kind of just like, I've kind of learned them by just talking to people, and then someone tells me, hey, I saw that you're trying to do this thing. You should maybe try to do it this way instead. I think that's like one of the best ways to learn. So to show you what I'm doing with the lines, there's actually a really cool effect called offset. So all we have to do is select this thing, and then I use this search bar a lot to search for effects, but we're just gonna double click offset, and what we can do is when you kind of change the value, after it goes off of the right side, it immediately comes back to the left side. You could do this any number of ways, but this is probably the cleanest way to get this particular effect. It's something that someone showed me a while back, and I use it a lot in a lot of different instances. Like the great thing about a lot of these effects in After Effects is that they can be repurposed in a lot of very general ways. It's just you kind of have, the tricky part is knowing when to apply them. And
Yeah.
I think that just comes with like some experience, and also just, someone tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, you should check out this cool way to do something.
Yeah. Destiny says that After Effects is so complicated to me, but I sit down and learn bits and pieces of it. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. You don't have to sit down and try and learn an entire piece of software in one go. There's many times where, I know for me when I was first learning Illustrator, the first time I used a pen tool, I hated it. It was like the bane of my existence. But then after I kept picking it up and trying different things, using different tutorials, it got a little bit better, and things changed with that. Now, today, I don't use a pen tool that often, but you know what? It's something where over time you get better and better when you use this bits of software, and you learn a lot more over time.
And I think definitely try to focus on like more like what you can do than what you can't. Like you can build a lot of cool projects with just what you know, and then just over time add small things to kind of your toolkit, and then the next project that you take on, just be like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on how I can integrate this small thing that I've learned into this next project. And over time, you're gonna see like your projects level up a lot.
Yeah. And I saw a question in there, is Adobe Font free to use? I believe if you have a Creative Cloud account and you have a subscription to Creative Cloud, then Adobe Fonts is free and you can use it for any types of projects, whether it's web branding, etc. I would check in on that because I don't know completely about any of like the legal aspects of it, but I believe that it is free.
I saw someone mention School of Motion. I also would second that. I think if you're learning After Effects, that's a great place to, look for some tutorials.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that in this day and age, there's so many different types of places you can go to for this types of knowledge. There is an amazing university called YouTube University that has so many resources out there, so many things from, working on After Effects, tips and tricks, and there's so many people that are putting out new and meaningful pieces of content and tutorials that help.
Yeah, so we've kind of built out a lot of the first part of it almost, where the text changes, and now we've got kind of these bars zooming through. And now, I guess one thing we do have to add is if you go back to the XD file, we have this blue bar that kind of fills up as the matchmaking.
The loading bar, right?
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and add that back now as well. This is also a situation, I think it's a good lesson for everybody, including myself, where you should totally name your layers. So I don't name any of my layers at all. And it makes my life a lot more difficult, especially in this case, because I just found the blue bar is rectangle 17, which means absolutely nothing.
It is interesting because I know when I was a UI UX designer, when I first started, I was using Photoshop to design my websites. That dates a lot of that. And I actually was not using naming conventions for a while. Mm-hmm. And the developers yelled at me.
Oh yeah, I bet they love that.
They were not happy about that. I had to learn very quickly about naming conventions. And it's interesting because it's harder for me because the fact that being an illustrator, working in Illustrator, I actually don't separate things into layers except for animation.
So you do everything like all in
one layer. One layer. Yeah, I use the keyboard shortcuts to send things to the back, bring it forward. And I know it's not the best thing to do, but honestly, for a lot of the illustrations or branding work that I do, I don't necessarily need to do that. But it is something when you are working in animation or working with something that's going to go into After Effects, you should definitely have naming conventions because you don't want to run into that problem of rectangle 17. Yeah. Trying to find that one specific line item.
As somebody who works on mostly one layer, do you have any tips or tricks on like sometimes when you have like clipping masks and then like shapes on top of the clipping mask or in the clipping mask, like how you get to like the thing that you want to get to? Because I know I run into that sometimes.
So my workaround is I will actually just lock things.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, so what I will do is if like that situation where you have a clipping mask and you have like 10 or like let's say 3 different things on top of each other and it's hard for you to select that one specific instance, I will just lock for that moment the other 2 items so I can get to that one piece.
Wow.
And I know people are they're screaming at me in the chat. They're like, no, that's crazy, don't do it. But that's just how I go about doing that.
That's crazy.
I see that Kevin had asked, Kevin Rostron, I believe, had asked earlier about making a game app live to play. I think, I'm not quite sure. I think there is a lot of development that has to go into that. Do you know anything? I mean, working for a gaming company, I think that you should know, right?
I don't actually work on the physical game, so I'm not familiar with the pipeline exactly. I would imagine that's something to do with potentially like Unity or like I know sometimes there's like Photoshop, ZBrush, like Cinema 4D involved. But in terms of like getting a game from conception into production into release, I can't really help you out too much there.
Yeah, I believe that there is some development involved. I don't know if there's resources out there. I'm sure that there probably is on YouTube or elsewhere that will help you learn how to do that. I know that there are plenty of games out there that are bootstrapped and they are created by individuals and put up into the marketplace. Unfortunately, I don't know that resource, and I know the reason why I wanted to answer that question, Kevin, because I know you had asked that I think a couple times in the chat.
So for those of you that were just watching, I did something called a track mat. So I made a rectangle above the blue bar, and there's a feature in After Effects called track mat, and what it does is you kind of go through these options. It basically tracks the bottom layer to the top layer. So so the rectangle's still here, but it's used more as like almost like a luminosity mask kind of thing, where it just masks it, like it's like a moving mask. So like I can animate like where the rectangle is, it blocks out the previous layer, and then anything like when I move it away, it kind of reveals like the parts that aren't covered by the red rectangle. If that makes sense.
I see some people are mentioning Unity for gaming, and I think and I know Kevin also mentioned Creative South and how they had a gaming app. If I remember correctly, they actually used Unity to create that app, so maybe that is a good resource for that.
So let's see. I'm gonna just play this through just to see like kind of where we're at. So we've got the blue bar now filling up really slowly as our match is being made, and I like that. So now I guess the next thing is to, so we have to do a few things to transition to the match screen. We need to hide this text, we need to fade everything out, and then we need to expand this rectangle. So I guess I'll kind of one at a time do that. We'll let this run for like a little bit because I think it's cool to see the matchmaking state, but then
I'm curious, can you, at this point, can you actually share the full length of what all is happening?
Oh yeah, I can do that.
I think it'd be really cool for everybody to see, what's going on. It just has to do the.
It has to basically a RAM preview.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So once the green bar down here like fills up, it'll play at full speed. This is where having a strong computer helps a lot.
Yeah, that's why I love my MacBook Pro. It's actually faster than my iMac at home, and I've never had Illustrator or any other software crash on me. Unfortunately, on my iMac, it happens all too often. Oh, that's really cool seeing that.
Yep. And then, if we have time, we're going to add like a cursor at the end, so it'll just wrap it up really nicely. I think that's something, because sometimes it can be hard to follow along the animation if there's no cursor, so it's kind of a good tool to help ground whoever's looking at your animation, and keying them into what they should be looking at.
Yeah.
Cool, so I think I'm pretty happy with where this is at. Right now, I'm going to kind of do the things that I had mentioned. So first we're gonna kind of fade everything out. So you basically, like I said, remember when we grouped everything together? This is where this is super handy. So I basically only have to change the opacity. So if you select a layer and hit T, it brings up the opacity keyframe. Clicking the stopwatch drops something called a keyframe at that point in time. So basically, it's telling After Effects like, hey, at frame 500, the opacity of profile is set at 100. And now, if we fast forward to 530, I like to space things in increments of 30, because there's 30 frames in each second, so it helps. It just helps keep my head straight with like the timing and stuff. Obviously, if you want like more intricate timings, you probably should have smaller increments than 30, but I think for UI animation, like 15 and 30 are pretty good benchmarks in terms of speed.
It looks like Kali says, would be dope to have the blue bar bouncing from left to right versus loading slowly. So maybe it's going like just bouncing back and forth. I actually think that's a good idea.
That's a good idea. Let's do that.
Because right now it's just crawling, slowly across. But having it do that, I think that might be a better interaction. Thanks for that suggestion.
Yeah, Appreciate it.
I also just want to mention in less than 45 minutes, we're going to be giving some design feedback on today's challenge through Discord. So if you guys are not have not submitted or haven't looked at what today's design challenge is, please definitely check that out. It's right there in the chat. Right above that, you should see challenge, and that will be today's design challenge.
Cool. So so we can go ahead and just copy the keyframes like every 30 or so. I should probably go ahead and play this to make sure that it isn't super fast. So I'm gonna go ahead and
run a RAM preview.
Yeah, just run a RAM preview. That's pretty cool. I like it. It's nice and
I
subtle.
actually would maybe speed it up just slightly. Actually, no, wait. How that was perfect. That was probably just the RAM preview that was going slow. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, this feels really nice. Thanks for the suggestion.
Yeah. So if anyone has any questions whatsoever about what Kevin is doing here, or anything about what I was doing in Adobe Illustrator, or even questions in general about either or even XD, please feel free to ask away. So I think while you're going through and you're making some more tweaks, Kevin,
yeah,
I think we'll probably jump back onto my screen. I think that what I'm gonna do is with the badge is I'm actually gonna have it to where it says like maybe it's Rook level 1. So maybe there's different tiers for each one. So instead of it just going from pawn to Rook, it's like maybe there was pawn level 5 or something like that. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just going to explore how I want to go about saying level 1 in this badge.
I think that's a good idea.
So I'm going to first start with an abbreviation for level. And we're going to put it right here off to the side. And then we're going to do another one off to the side here. And I think, I'm going to try to type it out first. I don't think that's going to work. With stuff like this, a lot of times with badges, the most common things that you'll see is you'll see people use trademark, establish, especially if you're doing badges for branding. And I generally like to keep it anywhere from 2 digits or 2 letters to up to about 4 digits or letters, just because relatively whenever you have things on either side, it can get very complicated very quickly and get very crazy. So like for instance, if I had this spelled out level and then I had it, let's say 5. The one problem is that we have here, this is 6 characters and this one is 4 characters. And it kind of throws off that balance. And so instead, I like to keep it to where it's maybe have this put to level. And actually, let's do this. Let's do level, let's say 01. Maybe it goes up to 100. That'd be a crazy amount of levels, but we can at least have that there so we have that symmetry. Oh yeah, that's actually a good call. Next level reached. There we go. All right, so let's see. Playing around with this, I don't know if this is like how the final will look or if this is like how I want it to be overall. So we're still going to just play around with it.
Colleen made another suggestion about changing the size of the bar, which I also think is really cool. I'm doing that right now. You'll get to see it later.
The loading bar, right?
Yeah, the loading bar. Yeah. So now if we it in the middle, it kind of extends a little bit, and then when it gets to one side, it shrinks just a little bit. I think it'll look really nice. We should jump back to Rocky to watch him continue jamming on the badge, but
yeah. So I think this is a good start for this badge so far. And the thing is that I want it to be a little bit more, I hate saying it like this, but interesting. The one thing, especially with badges like this, that you would put into an app or on a website, it should be a little bit more dynamic and it should be a little bit more eye-catching. And there's multiple ways you can do that. It could be through color, or it could be adding additional elements to the actual design. I don't think it's going to be color here. I think it will be playing around with the elements and playing around with what we include in here. So I think what I want to do is I want to test out a couple things, and really it's just trial and error. It's about playing with these and seeing what works. So I think I want to actually see how this looks with like maybe a circle behind the rook. And so what I did was I first created the circle, and then I'm just going to, I copied it and I'm going to paste it behind by using Command B. And let's actually look at the color palette that we have here for this. So this is the color palette that we're using. And let's see. I don't like that because it blends in too much with the background, but maybe we can try pink or even orange. I think that might be a little too much. The dark color is feeling good, but I want to drop down the opacity a little bit. So I think I'm going to drop that down to 50. Seems almost right, but my magic number is usually 35. I don't know why it is, but for some reason 35 is my magic number.
Did anyone in the chat have magic numbers? I know mine's usually like 45 or 65.
Really?
Yeah.
For like opacities or in general?
Like opacities, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. Why it is that we have, or why we have these like favorite numbers when it comes to using opacities. For me though, for some reason 35 just feels right when I use it for all of my opacities. It feels so weird for me to actually go through and do one that's at 50% or 25%. I'm like, oh God, this is too dark or this is too light. I need to do 35.
Kevin asked if using XD, do you need to know any coding? You do not need to know any coding. It's all visual.
Yeah, that's what's so great about it, is it's all visual based. And what's even better is the fact that it's vector based, right? It's something where, you know, for instance, I use XD not just for creating a website or creating a mobile app. I use it in other fashions like creating social content or creating, for instance, a stylescape for branding. And the reason why I use that over using Illustrator or Photoshop is because it's actually really interesting. The file sizes on XD are so much smaller than using something like Photoshop. And a great example, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, I used to create all my social posts through Photoshop. And I would have this giant document with 100 different artboards. Everything had so many layers and so many smart objects. And when I would save it, it would take about 5 minutes to save because of how big the file was. I believe it was like 2 gigabytes. So using XD, that file size went from about 2 gigabytes down to I think about maybe 20 megabytes. So it's a huge difference. Looks like we got some numbers. Kali also says 35. We've got 39, 10. In After Effects, my favorite numbers are 50 and 70 for speed graph settings.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we can talk about that later after we get into some easing. But,
yeah. And I think even like, and I see here increments of 10. And I agree, like for me, especially when it comes to spacing, I use increments of 10. But for opacity, I still feel that 35 is my favorite number. I'm gonna still follow that. So what are we looking at here, Kevin?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Right now, I'm just working on kind of expanding the button after, you know, we found a match. So the way I've done it is within this rectangle, there's a property called path. So what it lets you do is essentially manipulate where the vector points go at a specific point in time. So I actually think it's pretty interesting, so I'm gonna redo what I just did. So this is kind of the point at 5:15. I've kind of decided this is when I want this animation to trigger. So I hit the stopwatch, which basically tells After Effects that these 8 points have to be here at this point in time. And now a second later at 5:45, I basically just kind of take the selector tool and just drag it out So now After Effects is basically like over time moving the points to where they need to be at that point in time. So I'm going to continue doing this for the rest of the points. And what that's going to do is like after the animation's finished, the button will essentially have taken over the whole screen, and then we'll be able to transition it super nicely into the match screen. We're gonna fade everything in afterwards.
It seems that Michael Campbell actually has a good question.
Yeah.
Does XD store everything as SVG code rather than putting pixels on canvas? Maybe that's why the smaller file sizes than Photoshop or Illustrator. Do you have any idea if that's how it goes about? I believe that is similar.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does store things as SVG, and also the fact that it's vector too. So I'm guessing maybe because of the fact that it's vector, it is SVG.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's a difference between like the native vector format and SVG, but everything in XD is vector, and then you can then from there export it either to SVG or PNG or anything that you need to. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's why if the file size is smaller than Photoshop or AI.
And XD is available in the Creative Cloud subscription. So if you have a Creative Cloud subscription, you guys can definitely get XD. I tend to try and play with every single new app that comes out. My personal favorites right now are, of course, Illustrator, XD. I use InDesign a lot, Photoshop a lot, and I do use a lot of the mobile apps when I'm using my iPad Pro to create. So great questions, everybody. Thank you so much for asking questions. We have a little bit more than 30 minutes before we jump into design feedback. And I think while Kevin is going through here and working on some more of the animations, I think we're going to jump back into my screen here. And I'm actually going to, I think one thing I'm going to try is I'm actually going to try and use a star in the background of this badge to just maybe add a little bit of detail to it. So in my tools, I'm going to go into the star tool, and I'm going to just click in roughly what I believe is the center of the rook, and I'm going to click Option, or excuse me, I'm going to click Shift and drag it outward. Now, I already had this shape created, or this type of star created here, but if you wanted to create a star with however many sides of the star that you wanted, what you can do is while you have it pulled out, you can use your arrow keys and increase the size or decrease the size to whichever you would like, whether it was a triangle-like star or I don't know, what would you call that? Like a quad star?
Yeah.
A regular one. I kind of like the six-figured. We have a 7 here. That actually doesn't look too bad. 8, but I prefer the 6 for this instance.
Yeah, and this is how I like to make triangles personally. I don't know. It's like a really easy way, like how you just showed. You can just lower the number of points to 3, and then it's like a really fast way.
There's so many different ways you can go about doing this stuff, and it just is amazing to see how everybody does it. Because the one thing is with any type of software, whether you're using Adobe Illustrator, After Effects, XD, everybody does things a little bit different. And so it makes for a really interesting time when you actually see how other people create. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with this and see what I can do. Now, the way that you can control how the size of the actual segments of the star or how thin they are is by just messing with Shift, Option, Command, and I believe Control on your keyboard. I thought it was going to be a little bit better here, but you know what? That's okay. So I'm going to take this star, copy it. I'm going to paste it behind the rook here. And I like this. But I kind of want these to go outward a little bit more. But the one problem I have is these points. So I'm actually going to, this point here I think is okay. I think, well, I guess I can move it up a little bit. So I'm breaking it from its original state. I'm gonna bring this one up here a little bit. The one thing that I need to be concerned about is just how this is here. We don't want the edges of the star to come out. So it looks like this might be a little off center.
And what I know Rocky's been talking about working with shapes a lot. I think working with shapes is really good, but sometimes it can put people in a mindset where they don't ever want to like modify the shapes at all.
Yeah.
And I think like what Rocky just did is he used the shape tool to like make this 6-pointed star, but then, you know, when he saw that there were parts of it that need to be modified, he moved the points. And that's like something that's pretty key, especially if you want to do this kind of illustration, is you want to find places where you can kind of add a little bit of optimization, and don't be like limited by just the shapes.
Yeah, like it's something where it's like when you're creating with just shapes, you have to be comfortable with going through and breaking from their traditional mold. You know, when we look back at what we created yesterday with the pawn here, you know, a great example is, for instance, this circle here is all made up of a rectangle with rounded corners. And you can see here the other parts of it too. These are all rounded corners. This one part here, this was where I actually broke it from its original rectangle shape, and I took two parts of it and I brought them inward. So all of these here, they're breaking from their original shape that we created with, and that's okay. And you don't have to use a pen tool to actually manipulate them. You can just use the selection tool, the scale tool, and use rounded corners in order to do that. So I feel like this is starting to feel, this is starting to feel a lot better to me. What are your thoughts on it? What would you think could possibly, you know, bring this like over the hill and make it even better? I'm curious.
Maybe, you know, like those little dots that you have on the rook, maybe we could kind of have that somewhere else on the badge, just like as a repeated element, just to like kind of make it thematically kind of bind together.
I do like that, yeah. I think maybe even adding some lines above the level and the number might be a good idea too. Mm-hmm. I think that this is getting to a good point, a good spot and everything. How are you doing over in After Effects? Are things going well?
Yeah, things are going really well. I guess I can go ahead and kind of play this animation through. So we kind of have the button changing. We kind of have the bar moving.
Oh, I like that bound. Oh, that feels so good.
And then once we add some easing to it, and then we have the button expanding. And now what I was going to do is I was going to import the second screen. We don't have to do too much with the second screen. We just have to kind of fade it in for now. We can probably do some more stuff if time allows. So similarly to our first screen, we're just going to export. I'm going to do the thing where I don't name all the layers again, and we're just going to port it in so it shows up in our project file. We can go ahead and just drag this in, I think, and we just have to find where to cut the layer. So you can basically drag the layer so it's hidden until when you need it. So it's gone and then it appears, but we don't want it to just like show up here. We want it to fade in a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring this a little bit further back, and then I'm gonna change the opacity here from 100 to 0, and then change this back to 100. So now what we have is during the transition, maybe we should move it so that it's...
Yeah, because it like has that weird overlap effect.
Yeah, I'm not super into the overlap effect. And then it just fades in. So there's obviously a lot more things that we could do with it, but I think just using some basic properties, I think we've got a pretty nice transition here, and I think we're in a pretty good spot. I can kind of finesse this more if you want, or it kind of depends on what the stream wants to see.
Yeah, let's actually put that out to everybody on the stream. What would you like to see him alter this more, or what would you guys like to see when it comes to what Kevin's doing in After Effects? or would you like to see us jump back into XD?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're curious. So while we're asking that, I'm gonna let's jump back onto my screen, and we can kind of see like what I've started to do with this. So I added in these little lines here,
Nice,
just
I
to
like
like
that.
yeah, because it like frames it a little bit better, and so now this space feels like it's a little bit more utilized. And I went ahead and got a copy of those dots that we used, and I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually have them up here. Whoops. Because it's the reason why it's doing that is because they're different color, and maybe use this as kind of like a framing element
Yeah, I like that.
for this. One thing I also, and I just happened to think about this as I was doing it, one thing a lot of people ask me is how I go about using shortcuts. And one thing I do a little bit differently is I create my own. I don't know if you do the same thing, but I create my own shortcuts, and that's kind of what I just did there. So you'll notice that I used a shortcut to go ahead and get the reflect. And I think that if you have certain types of Gesundheit off screen, if you have different like tools that you use a lot, I would suggest that you create custom shortcuts for those. For instance, for me, I don't really use rulers that often. So I've actually gotten rid of the ruler shortcut. And instead what I do is I create a custom shortcut in order to reflect, because I use reflect a lot. I don't know about you. But
Yeah, reflect's a pretty big one for me. I should be better about it. I kind of just still stick with the default settings, mostly because I just learned that way, and it's like
Yeah.
hard for me to switch it up.
See, I use it for so many different things, including offset path. I have a shortcut for that.
yeah.
So you can actually go into the keyboard shortcuts under Edit, and you can then go through, and they have tool shortcuts, but then they also have menu command. And so, for instance, if you want to do reflect, you would go into Object, Transform, and then you could actually go and set a special shortcut for that specific item. And I use Command R for that shortcut. And what it'll do is it'll override, it'll first ask you, but you can override an existing shortcut that Illustrator has to use that. But I think what I'm going to do here is the one problem I think with this is that I have too much of the same colors being used. So I'm going to start bringing in that orange color, or seeing how we can bring in the orange color a little bit more. Ooh, actually, that doesn't look too bad.
Yeah.
Having that star back there, I feel like that gives it a lot more oomph than the other one does.
Yeah, I like how the colors are playing with one another in this one.
Yeah, so I think, let's see, the one part is this could be done. There is one part that is bugging me. It's these dots. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. Or actually, yeah, I'm going to delete this one. And I'm going to take this one over here, and I'm actually just going to rotate it. I'm going to click on the individual one. We're going to zoom in here. And I could be very precise in how I align this, but I'm just going to eyeball it. I prefer a lot of times to eyeball it than to actually make it precise. Sometimes because if you try and make it too precise, it will be a little too much, or it might not look quite right. So I'm going to group those back together, and I'm just going to press Option and drag. Whoops. I'm going to Option and drag this over, pressing Shift to keep it aligned. And then I'm going to use my shortcut for reflect and flip it.
Nice.
So now that's feeling a little bit better. And honestly, like, there could be so many different things that we could do here. I don't know. I feel like this is actually pretty good for what we want. We don't want something too overly complicated, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because I could sit here and we could create 100 different versions of this. I have a lot of files on my computer where I've gone through and I've created 100 different versions of one specific badge. It can get so addicting, and I could probably spend an entire stream just doing that, but I don't want to do that. So I think this is where we're gonna stop on this badge. And I think that this is gonna look pretty good.
Yeah, one of the things that I guess you mentioned is kind of also knowing when something's done, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's something in my career that I feel like I'm still not very good at, you know? I think it's like this never-ending battle, you know? You always want to like work on something, but there is a point where like you can overwork something.
Yeah.
Right? And then it just loses like what makes it really good in the first place. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I do. There is such a thing as overworking a piece, whether it's an illustration, a logo, a badge, even a mobile app or a website design. And you kind of, you have to know, okay, I can't keep touching this. I'm going to murder it. Instead of it being like a supermodel, it's going to look like a clown because there's too much like makeup or something like that caked on. That's a weird analogy, and I have no idea where that came from, so I do apologize. But what I'm actually going to do is I jumped into the shared XD file that we have, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a quick screen.
Yeah, do it.
Let's see. How about I'm just going to make a copy. I'm going to press Option and drag this screen here just so I have the same stuff. And I am going to delete what you have here because I'm going to create just like a little modal pop-up.
Cool.
And this is the first time I'm actually in XD on the stream, so this is going to be interesting.
You're doing great.
I know. I'm just gonna eyeball it too. I'm not going to be very precise in this because I just want to show a little bit of context into what we're doing here. Let's see. You had your rounded corners to set to 20.
Yeah,
Whoa.
20.
You can tell that I'm not in here a whole lot because everything is just going crazy, but that's okay. We like unplanned stuff. All right, so we have this, and now I'm going to paste our badge, and we're going to shrink it down. Ooh, the one problem is I actually have to go in and do one alteration in Illustrator. I'm just going to go through here and expand the stroke. So I'm going to expand appearance.
Oh, why are you doing that?
Because when I brought into XD, the stroke blew out when I shrunk it down.
Oh, got it.
Is there a trick to do that?
No.
Okay.
I was.
Yeah, so sometimes I will have to do that when I have items that are stroked.
Got it.
And yes, thank you. I keep changing how I say this person's name because I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Kita. Thank you. Yes, I am saving my work, and I think that Kevin is as well.
I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not.
Oh,
if it crashes, we're totally doomed.
Oh no! Hopefully it does not crash.
I like to live my life on the edge.
Okay, so we brought in this this badge here, and let's see. You know what? I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to bring this over, and I'm actually going to take this screen because I kind of like how a modal would look with this actual UI here. So I'm going to copy what I have here and just drag it over, and hopefully I don't destroy something. Okay, good.
Perfect.
There we go. So it could be something where in the middle of the match, somebody got an upgrade or something, like they reached a new level because they took someone's pawn. And so they're now at this new level.
That looks really cool. We can also maybe add some text as well. Or maybe just because we already have text there, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can just...
Well, I think we can actually have something there, and that's why I just decided to move this up. Let's see. We're gonna. It's always fun when you're working in someone else's file because you're like, I don't know how I want to do this yet.
No, this is looking really great, and I think this is a great example of how using illustration can really add a lot of personality to an app or whatever you're trying to create. Let's see. Can you export HTML, CSS, or JavaScript? Yeah. So Michael Campbell's asking if you can export HTML, CSS, or JavaScript in XD. I think that you can you can see some of the HTML and CSS, like you can see the CSS values, but I think when you're building something out, it's best to kind of work those things out in code. You know, even if there are values given to you, it's a lot of times the values given to you are only within the context of the thing that you're selecting. So, you know, if you need to do like responsive web design, you probably have to kind of figure that out on the front end side of things.
Yeah, and it looks like Howard Pinsky mentions that they're actually working on the proper stroke scaling so that when you bring something in, that it does, we don't have to worry about, you know, expanding it or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Wow, bringing CSS to design specs would be really cool. That seems very challenging, but that would be very cool.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like what Webflow is doing too, where you have some of this, you know, CSS functionality and everything. Yeah, so let's see how we have less than 15 minutes left before we're going to go in and do some design feedback on the design challenge for today. But until then, let's see how everything's going over here with Kevin.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of show where we're at, and then I think we should probably I'll probably jump back into XD and maybe finish some things off here. But I did want to show like everyone like maybe what a polished version of this could look like. You know, you would put it in a different comp, you would have it zoomed in, and then when people click, it kind of does something like that. Like there's just a few more things to this that if we had enough time, we could kind of get to.
And I think that's just amazing to see you know, how much you can potentially do by taking an XD file, you know, into After Effects. You know, that it blows my mind to just see that and to see, you know, what you were able to create. Because you said that this took, you know, how long?
I mean, what we did today is, I think, pretty close. I think just maybe another half an hour to an hour could probably get it here. So just using kind of the same principles that we've kind of been going over. I'm going to click this so we can...
Yeah, you can, and by all means, you can do whatever you want to that little bit I threw in there.
No, it's really good. I just wanted to, So I want to encourage people to, you know, learn After Effects, because I think, like for the people here coming to learn about case studies, I think in my career it's been really valuable to show these interactions, especially like when you're talking to potential employers and stuff. I think it really gives you something to talk about in the interview.
So Howard Pinsky has a great question for you, Kevin. If we were to introduce more advanced animation control in XD, what one or two must-have features would you like to see?
I think so. I've messed around a little bit with some of the linking from artboard to artboard in XD. I think the big thing is just like easing is a really big thing in animation, especially to get these animations to look right. I think you have to be really precise. So I think really good and fine-tuned like easing controls would be good. And then honestly, just the basics, just like I think the properties I use the most in After Effects are like scale, opacity, position, and then what else? I think animating the color of something is also pretty useful as well. Like I think I use that here, like being able to animate like a rectangle, like having like either a button go from blue to like a lighter shade of blue, I think would be pretty useful as well.
Yeah.
When it comes to making these sort of animations, like for like portfolio pieces, I use a lot of cameras actually. Like so when we're basically I'm using a camera in After Effects to zoom out from this comp.
Yeah.
And it's not really useful for like that, I think that app making process, but to like for the showing off the design in your portfolio process, I think it's something that could be kind of cool too.
Yeah, I think that XD does a great job with prototyping, right? But what we're doing here is we're not just doing a prototype. We're actually kind of putting a spin on it, and we are making like this is a perfect piece to have on your portfolio, right? To show like what you can do and everything. So I think like there's kind of like a time where you should use just a prototype, and then there's a time where you should do like an animation like this, right? And I think for a case study, this is actually something that would be really perfect for that. And I think with a prototype is something that you would actually share with a client or someone, or like a group of people to see like how the interactions work.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think XD is great for like production use, like to get buy-in from either your clients or internal stakeholders or engineers. I think it's great for that purpose.
Yeah.
When you need something that is going on your portfolio, I think sometimes it's hard to get the prototype in its entirety onto the webpage in like a good way, in my opinion.
And I think that it's also something where it's like with an animation, you can be a little bit more finessed, right? And a little bit more curated, where when you're sharing something with a client to get their quick feedback, you don't have the time to go through and create something like that. And so again, it comes down to that whole idea of what is the purpose of what you're trying to do.
Actually, animated states would be cool. Is that kind of a response to Zorro? Because I think if you could kind of have like an animated artboard that's like preloaded with like an animation that fires off on a particular click or on hover or like on swipe or something, that could be really cool. So you could do some work in After Effects, then bring it back into XD, and then have a prototype that has like pretty high fidelity like animations baked into it. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think that there's so many potential things out there that they can do. And XD, it's been around for a few years now, but it's still something that they're constantly working on, improving, making better. And that's what I love about all of these softwares is every single year more features come out, better things come out, and it's a really cool thing to see the progression of that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, everybody out there, do you guys have any questions that you would like to ask about using Illustrator or using XD or even using the two combined, or even more about the amazing After Effects that Kevin is using?
Oh, trim paths is a good one. I use that a lot in After Effects. Yeah, it's definitely a lifesaver.
It's always crazy, right? How certain things that you use, whether it's, I don't know, what would you call that? You would call that an effect, right? Or shortcuts, or different ways that we go about using, the software. There's so many things that save us time or make things easier, right? And so, like, for instance, if you thought back about the first time you jumped into After Effects or the first time you jumped into Illustrator, if you wanted to create even just like maybe, for instance, on my badge here, just the rook, it would take you probably a long time to do it because you would have to sit through there. You wouldn't know the shortcuts. Over time, you just pick up these things that make things go faster and make things go a whole heck of a lot better.
Yeah, and I think that it's just keeping at it, I think trying to, find things that inspire you to continue to, make different things, to test those skills is kind of how you build up sort of the muscle memory.
So Ariana has a question. Do you have a favorite resource for getting started with After Effects?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier in the stream, I think Mount MoGraph, it's a YouTube channel, is a really great resource. It's got After Effects, Cinema 4D, and a few
And there
other
was
things.
another one too that you mentioned.
School of Motion.
School of Motion,
School
yeah.
of Motion is also very good.
And of course, there are also Adobe YouTube videos as well that actually will go through and share some of the basics with After Effects. I've taken a look at them and I've used them from time to time when I need like a refresh on some of the stuff that I'm learning.
Let's see.
I love Command Z.
I
Yeah,
do
I think
too.
I think everybody loves Command Z, right?
You said you started in MS Paint back in the day. Remember when
Yeah.
there was only 3 undos?
Oh my God. Yeah, that was always the scariest part. And I would be sitting there and I would be like, oh my God, what is that mess up right there? Undo, undo. No, everything's messed up.
You know,
And even with like Photoshop, because Photoshop just updated recently where it used to be you'd have to do like hard undos in order to undo some things. And now it's a lot simpler and easier.
that's crazy.
Yeah. It is really cool to see like these progressions.
Oh, Video Copilot's also a very cool resource. That's mostly for like VFX, but I think there's actually a lot of pretty cool uses. I've seen this one guy who, I think his name's Gleb. He does a lot of these really cool, like futuristic, like AI sort of visualizations, and I think he kind of does a lot of the stuff in the Video Copilot vein. So I would also suggest that.
All right, so we have less than 5 minutes. In fact, less than 4 minutes left before we're going to go through and do some design feedback on today's challenge. Again, please, guys, submit to the Discord channel with any and all pieces that you guys are working on. Me and Kevin here are going to go through and we're going to give feedback like we did yesterday on what everybody has been creating. So I'm really excited for that. How about you?
Yeah, I'm super excited to see what everyone's made, and I had a lot of fun with it yesterday, so I'm super excited to keep it going.
I see actually an interesting question. Do you guys have any good tips for someone that is just starting off? I will start my bachelor's in digital design this fall, and I'm really excited about it. I know my suggestion, but do you want to go first?
The suggestion I always give people who are just starting out is to look at a lot of good designs. So like get on Instagram, get on Behance, get on Pinterest, get on Dribbble. Really, I think the hardest part of being a designer is kind of training yourself to learn what looks good and if something looks bad, why it looks bad. And I mean, it's something that I'm constantly trying to keep up to date on too. I think a lot of people, when they're starting out, they design a lot of things out of their own head. I think it's better to have like a more informed, like it's like be inspired by stuff. Like it's okay to look at other things. I think so many people think that if they look at something that they're immediately like just copying someone.
Yeah.
And I think
you kind of have to let inspiration come in. The one thing that I've always hated that people will say is that you shouldn't look at inspiration, that you should just create out of your own sphere. And I've never been a big fan of that because especially when you're just starting off, inspiration is key. It's where you're going to learn so much more. And my honest thoughts on whenever you're starting off is practice as much as possible. You know, I actually will tell people, and I've had people say some negative things about this. I tell people, copy. You know, don't share and don't try and pass it off as your own, but copy what you see other people creating so that you can learn how they did it. For instance, this badge I created, it would be really great if you actually took a screenshot of it and attempted to create it yourself. You know, don't share it on social media and say, hey guys, look what I created. But you can share with like, you know, hey Kevin, look at this awesome, you know, thing I did here. It's based on this. What do you think? Does it look really close to it? And what you're doing is you're learning how I went about creating this piece.
yeah, that's a great tip. That's something I did a lot, you know, as I was learning how to make things. So there's no shame in it, you know. I think it's kind of like sometimes it's kind of like
especially when you're just starting off or you're just starting to learn something.
Yeah.
Don't shame yourself into not doing it. Do it because that's what's gonna help you learn and grow. So we got about 30 seconds before we're going to jump into design feedback. So please, guys, submit as much as possible. I did see one quick thing that I just want to touch on that Kita posted. What do you guys think about personality tests and IQ tests for UI UX designers? She says that she personally hates them. I agree. I hate those.
I'm pretty sure that's not even legal to give an IQ.
Well, the personality, you know, the whatever those things are called. I had to take one for the last job I had. I don't think that they're very accurate. They don't help you out in the long run. It's a headache.
Yeah.
So just wanted to quick touch on that. But we're going to actually jump in to Discord.
Oh.
And let's see. I'm going to refresh this just in case. Hopefully I don't have to relog in. Oh, no. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
All right. So let's actually open this one up. Oops. So this was actually, we saw this yesterday, the original version of this. And I have to say, just like from that little bit, so I remember yesterday we had this, right? We had this lift off, and then we went into discover new places where you would basically type in what you're looking for. And then the next feature was you type in the place, you put in all the information, and now they've added this new CTA for search.
I like this.
I do too.
Yes.
I think that it's a nice, real good composition. I think that, this isn't something you normally see on a travel website. I think it's a really fun thing here. And I like the fact that there's now contrast between this, right?
Yeah, it's very clear, like the filter versus
the CTA.
thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I think last time, if I remember correctly, because this was yesterday, the bar here was actually all the way over, and then you had the search built in there.
Yes.
Now they've separated this, and I feel like this. I really like this.
Yeah,
I think
this is very successful in my opinion.
Yeah. So I definitely huge kudos for. Let's see who was this. This was Cars. Cars. I think you did an amazing job.
Great job, Cars.
Great job, and thanks for tuning in again. Let's see. All right. We have this one here. This is, I don't know how to really interpret this because it is just a single image. Maybe it looks like there's a Behance.
Huh?
Click to launch interactive prototype.
There you go.
Okay, it's loading. So we actually have a prototype this time around. This is from Marcus Valeriano. Ooh. Look at that.
Let's get tropical.
Yeah. I really like this. Okay. This is really cool. When will you travel? Yeah, see, he put a lot of effort into creating this prototype.
I think it's a pretty interesting pattern because usually, so when you click it, I like how it pulls up the calendar. After you click into the fields, I think it's pretty interesting and pretty intuitive, right? Like when you see the calendar, you kind of know that, hey, you're supposed to pick a date.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like this. I think the only thing it would be small nitpicky, right? Nitpicky suggestions for this. I think, for instance, these little ellipses on the back here. Let's see, can we actually use them? No, we can't. I think they're too big. I think they're a little too big. I would say maybe decrease the size of these by about 25%. And then these are throwing me off. All of a sudden, I'm looking here, and then all of a sudden I see the red, and it instantly draws my eye.
Yeah, they're a little bit too loud, I think.
Yeah.
I also have a little bit of feedback on the Take Me There button. It's not very clear that that's a button.
That is true. It feels like a pull tab, right?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the when will you travel, when will you return, how many are going. Those feel more like buttons to me than the Take Me There. So
that's true. Maybe instead of having it more like a pill, maybe having it to where it's just a rectangle with slightly rounded corners. Maybe that would help, right? Because that is now that you mentioned that, I do get that. I do get the fact that right now they feel more like they're CTAs or buttons. But I will say this, being someone who loves color, I agree with Sam that the color scheme is phenomenal. This yellow might be a little too much, but I think that I love the color palette of this, and especially with this background image. I would love to see what happened if it changed to a different background image, how we would feel. Because right now, because of all these blues, it works, right? But what would happen if all of a sudden this turned to red?
Yeah, because you're not always going to be able to control the background image. So it's good to, I think to Rocky's point, test on different backgrounds just to make sure you're getting the contrast that you need.
Yeah. But overall, though, I think you did an amazing job, especially in creating the prototype, because yesterday we didn't see any prototypes. We just saw videos or we saw just images. So great job on there.
Yeah, great job.
All right. So I think, we got some more that popped up. You know what? Let's actually quick touch on these two here, and then we'll scroll up for the other ones. And I think because this caught my eye, I was like, oh, this is actually, yeah, I know, right? I think, let's see, let's go back from the beginning, and we're just going to scroll through to see this. I kind of really like this overall design here. Let's scroll through, or we'll just go ahead and play it. So what are your instant thoughts?
So I like the overall look and feel of the site a lot. Like I like kind of the letting some of the background through on the tiles. I think that's cool, and on some of the inputs. I do think that the explore and the search they're too close in hierarchy. Like even though the search, like I don't know, I don't know what I should do first, like because
that's true.
It's unclear whether, because when I first looked at it, I thought the explore was the search bar because it's got a search bar like to the left of it, and then
yeah, and because right here at the bottom the search, you're already putting in your destination, or you're putting in where you're starting, and you're putting your destination, you're putting all this relevant information, but then you also have the explore up above it. I think that either, I think one or the other, right?
It's one or the other, or you maybe have like a tab that sits above everything where it's like explore or search. Like if you wanted two
Very
modes,
true.
But I think these two things need to be separated from each other in one way or another, just to kind of like reduce the amount of things that the user has to think about when they're trying to book their adventure.
Yeah, and I also noticed that the Explore CTA and the Search CTA have completely different treatments, or at least they're different sizes, or maybe I'm wrong at that. But it looks like, because like the Search CTA, it looks like there's a lot more space at the top and the bottom below the actual search typeface, versus at Explore where it's more put to the same size as the search. So I think that throws it off a little bit. As I was looking at more, I could see that. But I think also that maybe that the 6 fields here, it might be better if you were to take 2 of these and put them over to the right, versus having them here. Let me actually grab my mouse. Instead of having them down here, having them right here on the right side, because it just feels weird. It feels like it's not utilizing the space, as much.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I think either, like, we make the search bar that sits or the bar above it a little bit shorter, or right now you've got kind of like just a weird edge on the right hand side, and I think making like having 3 columns of 2 will help kind of balance out that space a little bit more.
And I see why they put the columns here, but here's then the question: what happens when you go and you click on your flight from, or your day, like the start date? Is it still going to pop up on the side here? It might even be something, and this could be completely wrong, so you can take it with a grain of salt. What if this was actually centered and then these popped up on either side? I don't know. It's a small little thought. It's something that you can try out just to see what you think.
No, but overall, I think visually it looks really strong. I think that's probably one of my favorite visuals. I was super into the whole kind of semi-transparent boxes and stuff.
Yeah. So then here's also this one here for ridgeling.
Ridgeling.
I like for one, the biggest thing to me when it comes to like these landing areas is the photography, right? Because like right here, this is powerful photography, but then it also lends into the same problem that the other one had that we saw just a little bit ago. Whereas, what if this photo was like a different color scheme that did not go with the yellow? So right now with using this single photo, it works. And you even have like a location tag at the bottom. And there is like a little ellipses I just noticed that's actually hard to see. Might be better to have it on the left or the right for it easier to see. But what would happen if that changed to like a purple or a blue or a green? Would that yellow still work like it does here? And even now it doesn't, it's really loud, right? Like, I can't even see the icon. I know what it is because I know it's a date, so it's going to be a calendar icon, but it is a little bit harder to see on a white background.
Mm-hmm. I think yellow is just a really tricky color in general to work with, especially in these cases, right? Because there's probably a lot of photos where it's going to be really hard to see that CTA. I think that there's like a slight drop shadow on the adventure. I'm not really sure. Is there?
It looks like there's something. It's hard to really see, but it looks like there might be some sort of either drop shadow or outer glow.
So that is I really appreciate that you did put the drop shadow on the text because
it helps it pop out a little bit more.
Yeah, it definitely shows me that you were thinking about the contrast. So I think for the people who are listening in, I think it's like if you're concerned about the contrast, I think just adding a subtle drop shadow can go a long way.
Yeah,
well.
And I think and again, you mentioned this, that yellow is a tricky color to use.
Yeah.
Usually if you have like a dark, like you have to have contrast. You can't put yellow onto a light color, it doesn't work. But if you were to instead put that on like a dark color like black, or have like even like for instance to help with this, having it pop out on other images, having some sort of overlay on top of the image, that might help. But when it comes to the instances of like using the icons in there, I would suggest switching to black or switching to another color, like a secondary color for those instances. That would be my biggest feedback when it comes to this. It's just mainly it's the color that is, I think, needs some tweaking. All right, so we're gonna jump up here. Yellowstone. Seems like it's just one image, so I don't think there's much we can do there. Maybe it's part of some larger piece. Let's see. It looks like this might be.
Is this another prototype?
I think so. Maybe we just weren't doing it right yesterday. We were looking at images and not actually jumping into the prototypes. It's okay. Learning experience. So Cars actually says that he learned a new design term, CTA.
Yes. Yeah, that's basically just what it's the user's call to action. So typically you want to figure out what you want your user to do, whether it's search or filter or buy something, and kind of make that the most important thing on the screen. So if you actually, a good example of this is here, right? You have Let's Get Away, which should be probably the primary CTA, but sign in is actually the loudest thing. So maybe that's what you want, maybe it's not. But that's like kind of like what like our feedback is centered around, right? Is figuring out like how loud should certain things be on a page.
Yeah, because like for instance, like what you just said, like the sign in, it's got this like magenta color, and so your eye gravitates a little bit more towards that. It does gravitate a little bit here, right? But here's the problem, is that you're using a white navigation bar up here, which also is the same color as the CTA. And so it kind of like, if you just squint at it, it meshes together and your eyes will gravitate more towards the top because there's more white than it does towards down here. But if you were to change this and have it to be more maybe that magenta color with white text, then I think that it would actually pop out a lot more on the page. But I will say I do love the functionality of this.
Oh, this is fun. Yeah.
Yeah, like seeing all of these. The photos are great. They really pop. There is one thing, and this is very nitpicky, and I'm sure that my professor, my typography professor, would be very proud of me for this, is that this space is kind of driving me a little bit crazy. That I think that's intentional. I'm gonna assume that that's intentional, but it just feels a little bit off. I think that having it left justified, I think would be a better option.
Yeah, left justified, or maybe even just centered on this. But yeah, I think maybe with the bottom cards, I think left justified is better.
Actually, that, yeah, that I think it's really open to interpretation, because if you were to center these, have like the set of the cards centered on the page, then you could center the text here right above it, and it might actually be have better synergy. And the cool thing about this is, if you centered this text, it would then point downward at the CTA. So it would actually draw your attention to the CTA a little bit better. So I think that actually would be a good idea to do that. I do like the fact that, and I think it might be a little tricky, the fact that you are changing this color of yours in here depending on the photo. It would be something that you'd probably the developers would have to do that every single time, or set it up to where it changed every single time, depending on any new photos that you uploaded.
Got it.
Any last little bits of feedback here, or?
No, I think we have it all covered. I think Greg just mentioned that it was intentional.
It wasn't.
It was.
It was intentional.
For like a more edgy.
Yeah, I think I would think about centering, and because I think like you have it to where it actually creates this perfect like triangle shape. That's what I would probably suggest. Okay, so we're gonna jump in to the next one. Okay, this is something that somebody found. I think this goes to something else. I don't think I think I saw this, but I don't think, let's see.
I don't think we reviewed this yesterday.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Maybe I just have an affinity for VW buses.
I mean, they are pretty awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So it looks like we can search here, and we see, oh, okay, so that's what people were sharing, because I remember seeing this here. Oh, wow, okay, so he has this functionality in here. Can you click in? No? Okay. I like this. I think, actually, no, you go ahead. You go first.
I like that there's a semi-transparent tile there, because it kind of helps defend against different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's unclear to me what the 3 dots do, because it's
well, I can see what it is. They're switching between different groups.
Got it.
So like you can see here like Yellowstone, Yosemite, then you click here and it's Grand Canyon, Zion. Mm-hmm. But I know what you're getting at. Like, you don't know until you actually click into it what it does. There's no like clear like, you know, arrows or anything like that.
I would go for arrows here that are aligned to the photos, because when you put dots like that, I think the whole modal is going to change. Like I think the search bar is also going to go away, because they're not, it feels like the way it's maybe positioned, I think, to me, when I'm looking at those 3 dots, like I know it's going to shuffle the 3 photos, but I think there's like I would suggest arrows on both sides, I think, in this case, because you want to get across the concept of like, we just want these 3 photos to shift, not the whole, we don't want the search bar and everything else to go away. Because I don't know, because for me, I thought potentially could be like hotels, flights, cars.
That is true,
like that.
yeah.
So
I think I have 2 things. There's 2 things that I want to address with this one, and it goes back. The first one goes back to photography, right? I do love the fact that you have this over here. I think this could be moved up a little bit, but I think that the one thing that you set yourself up for with this layout is that you have to have something that has a left object or some sort of thing that draws your attention to the left. And so you can't always find that, especially if you're looking at stock photography. You're not going to be able to find that all the time. And so it might be better not to have like this be a focus. It is something that I've done a few sites where I tried to do something similar in the past, and it was very difficult to find photography that could be matched up for that. And then the other thing is the CTA here for Roam, yeah, is, you know, it's super tight up top, and then it's not perfectly aligned to the actual like container. So you can see like it's super thin up top, and then it's got a much thicker part here. And I think it's actually that they could be two different like border radiuses, and that's probably what that's doing. But I think that those are my two biggest suggestions with this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think maybe even detaching the button from the search bar.
That's true. Just like with the first example we looked at, how they had the red part where you inputted, you know, the location, the travel dates, and then you had the search was a separate CTA. I think if you do that here, it actually might be a little bit better.
Kevin said, you wish you had more time on the design. You might make it into a personal project. I think you should totally do that. I think this is like one of those things that would make a great personal project.
And you know, I was talking to Gus yesterday, and he was telling me that one of the things that they want to do with these design challenges is make it to where at the end you have a full case study piece by using you're doing the same thing, but you're changing up what you're creating here. And I think that you should totally take this and expand on it how you want to, and make it into a case study. The one thing I would also suggest, I'm going to just do a small little bit here before we jump into the next one because of time, is that, you know, actually sketch things out and document those process, like of you sketching out a wireframe or you trying to figure out the flow of something, and use those little artifacts in the case study. Okay, I think we have time for one more. Okay, it looks like there's like multiple versions here. It's single screenshots. It looks like it's basically the same thing, just with different CTA colors depending on the photo. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Kevin?
I actually think that this particular layout is probably, it defends better against multiple different photos. I really appreciate that you took the time to mock it up against different backgrounds. The one thing that I would caution you against doing is changing the CTA color.
That is true.
So I see you change. I get why you're doing it, but I think mostly for just training people to see a certain color and know that it's like,
this is like a CTA, a button that you want to click on.
Sure. So like as a user, if I keep going to the site and the primary search button like changes color, I think that's going to be a little bit weird to me.
Yeah, it's not going to seem natural to what we all expect of a website. So I agree with you on that. And I think just like the same feedback we gave before, you know, this is actually perfectly aligned, but I actually think it would be better if this was broken out. And one thing that is getting to me is the fact that the CTA here is transparent. And so you want to have the CTAs be a bit more bold so that they grab people's attention. But this is actually set to probably a similar opacity or even a lower opacity than this, because you can kind of see, or at least that's what it looks like. You can see the mountain in the background of the CTA here. So I would suggest doing that. I think we have time for one more. Let's see. Jump in here. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. I think I like what you did with the open road. I can see why you did it, but back to Rocky's point, I think with different backgrounds, if you're going to keep this background, I think it will work, but I maybe explore a layout that isn't dependent on the photography. Also, the what will you discover, I would make that a little bit bolder because it's getting lost, and I think it needs to be brought forth a little bit. And then I guess CTA means call to action. And then my only other thing is changing the color of the start driving call to action button
to a different.
It's yellow against white, and we're getting that. It's just hard to tell that it's a button. I would go for maybe like a blue or a green or something, I think
Yeah.
you're probably going to find more success there.
And I zoned out for a second because I was reading the comments. But I think you touched on the typography a little bit here. The one thing that I would suggest with this is it's going to be difficult, right? It's going to be difficult because you have the typography hidden behind the road here, behind this this area, and the thing is that you would have to have separate files, or you'd have to have a weird dichotomy between these where this part was in the foreground, the text was behind it, and then this was a background. And it's kind of difficult to do.
It's cool though.
It's cool, yeah, but
cool.
it is difficult to do. So you also have to think about stuff like that. But, we're at 1 minute left, so we're going to have to stop here. This is going to be the last one we're going to be able to talk through. I just want to personally thank everybody for tuning in over the last 2 days and tuning in and watching us. I've had a blast. I'm sure Kevin has had a blast.
It's been a lot of fun.
And hopefully we see you guys in the future. So I hope you guys have a great day and have a great weekend.